This is the third year that the city has done a veterans panel, and this is the first time in those 3 years that we've been outside of Zoom boxes. So it's so great to be in person and actually get to interact with everybody that's here. So, is there another chair down there? Yeah, there is. It's just for me. I like that. So I did serve, started my career as a United States Navy nurse, and learned a lot of lessons during that time, lessons that I've taken with me throughout my life, and we'll be talking more about some of those lessons learned that all of us have had through our service. We have just an amazing panel with us today. I'm going to briefly just say their names and their branch of service. And so we'll start with Meredith Reed, who was a United States Air Force veteran. And we have Matt, and I always murder your last name.
It's all right. It's
Moravitz. And he served for 10 years, from 92 to 2002, in the Army. And then that wasn't enough. And so he went back, and he's currently serving in the United States Air Force, and he started that in 2017. And to tell you just a little bit about how I met him and the kind of man that he is, I got a call from him, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. And he knew that he was going to be deployed, and he wanted to marry the love of his life before he was deployed so that she would have all of his benefits while he was away. And so I had the opportunity to marry him just about a year ago. And it was outside, and it was about 9 degrees, so it was a really memorable.
It was on top of the Galleria.
It was wonderful. We have our own Rory Murphy here with us, who is a veteran of the United States Army. Caitlin Buckneski, I always say it wrong, is a veteran of the United States Army, and she's continuing that service at the NAC. Candace Hart is a Marine veteran, and then we have a really special guest with us today, who is Corey Peterson, and he is a veteran of the United States Army, but he's also the Deputy Director of the Utah Department of Veteran Affairs. So I can't wait to hear what he has to share with us today. This week, we're going to be doing a lot of different things for Veterans Day, and I hope that on Saturday at 11:11 a.m., because Saturday is Veterans Day, you'll pause and the siren on Main Street will sound. Meredith, you're a board member of the Board of Education. You're American Legion Post Commander. Are you still in that position? Excellent. She's a board member of the Fort Douglas Military Museum, and she's also a realtor with Coldwell Banker. So Meredith, what was your specific job when you were in the military, and how did it contribute to your unit's mission?
So I had the privilege and honor of serving as a chaplain in the Air Force. And chaplains really serve a unique role in the unit because they are outside of the chain of command. And we have complete privilege of privacy. So when an airman or soldier or family member comes to talk to the chaplain about whatever's on their heart, whatever it is that they need to talk about, it stays with us, and that really provides a great resource for the troops and the family members to know that they have someone that they can trust, that they can talk about the hard things that are happening at their life, or just come with they need some support or encouragement, that we are there, and that the command respects what we have to offer and bring to the unit. So it's a really special opportunity.
Matt, you just got home from a deployment. He's had multiple deployments and exercises, including the state of Utah COVID response, and he just got back from the Middle East deployment. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit about that. He's also, in his spare time, the owner of Wasatch Adventure Guides, which is a local Park City mountain guide service. So Matt, tell us about your experience during your most recent deployment.
Yeah, first I'd like to say thank you to all the veterans in here. Also to I'm sorry, it's pretty emotional. I got back a week and a half ago, so it's tough, right? All the civilians out there, all the military members, please take pause just for a minute and say thank you. It was complicated, obviously. You know, it's The realism is that there's a lot of civilians out there being hurt by all the things that we are doing geopolitically and everything else, meaning like everybody, right? So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Just found out today also, small world, Ember's daughter is in ADAB, where I was at in Al Dhafra. It's in the Emiratis. And pretty interesting because I ripped out of there, came here I got back the 23rd of October, and she came in on October 9th. So pretty, it's a hornet's nest, to be real, right? But what I do is I'm in the Air National Guard here in Utah, and so our mission over there is I'm in an air control squadron, so everybody flies safe altitudes over areas with the ATC, and then we as an air control squadron, we fly the combat players all the way to the deck. So our unit is over there, and that's what we do, is we make sure that the pilots get a God's eye view, if you will, a bigger view, because the radars only see so far, so we give them that bigger view. We talk to them, and then we bring them into the target or area that they have to investigate. So, but Al Dhafra it's an interesting place. The Middle East, we had about 9 different or 10 different detachments over there, and so they were in various places. It was super interesting, as you can imagine. 10 days in, we got there, and that's when our area of responsibility is the Strait of Hormuz, which is where the ships are coming in. Let's see, 10 days exactly after we got there, that's when Iran was deciding that they wanted to take some oil ships and stuff like that. So we went straight into that. But it was great to be there with my unit, and I had a very good deployment. But I had a lot of support from people. So if you know anybody or want to contribute to any of those factors, those people, I just really hope you choose to do so. He's a warlock. That's it. So what he's referring to, 109th Air Control Squadron, our call sign is Warlock. When I was over and so that's my unit down in Roland Wright, which is Salt Lake. When I was over there, of course, the Air Force always comes up with crazy names, so we're Kingpin over there.
And when you got home, you had a 90-degree temperature difference. Is that what I understand?
I had a puffy on. I looked like a hipster. I had a puffy on, I had a hat on, and it was 50 degrees.
And you were still cold.
I was still cold.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for your service and for joining us today. Rory, you were a paratrooper in the Army.
I was.
Can you... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Kevin said he'd wear his flight jacket today, but I had to wear my beret. So I'm going to put my beret on in honor of Kevin. So.
Can you tell us about a particularly challenging experience that you had and how you overcame it?
Sure. I had been in about 3.5 years, and I had a jump at Bragg, and it's not Bragg anymore. But we jumped into a storm, and I ended up breaking my back and my hip, and it kind of ended the career at that point. But so I'd say, challenge-wise, that was probably the most challenging thing that happened. So.
And it took a lot of rehab to come through that.
It still takes a lot of rehab.
I think so.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. So.
There you go. Caitlin, you're an Army veteran who served in both Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. Wow. She is the 12th female to graduate from Sapper School, which is a very physically and mentally rigorous combat engineer school. She's passionate about community service in her country, an outdoor sports enthusiast, and the former Division I athlete at Wake Forest University. What sport?
Cross country and track.
Wow, great. So
I'm slow these days, though, so don't anybody ask me to go for a run.
So what were your proudest accomplishments during your time in the military?
I got this question the other day from you guys, and I don't love talking about myself, but I will share it because I think in the broader scheme of the military and for women specifically, it's important. So you mentioned it. It would be graduating from sapper school. So for those of you, I feel like the Ranger tab and Ranger School are a little bit more commonly known. That was not open to females when I was in the military, but sapper school was. I was an engineer officer, and so I was able to go to sapper school. And it's kind of the engineer equivalent of Ranger School. And so to be able to even have the opportunity to go there was pretty important. It had opened up in 1999, and I went in 2006. So still relatively new. And it was hands down the hardest physical thing I've ever done in my life, but mentally too. So to be the 12th woman to do that was definitely my proudest accomplishment. But to me, it was more setting the stage for more women to be able to do that. And now in today's military, there are no barriers for women. If you can pass the test and keep up with every other person, you can be a Green Beret, you can be a Ranger, you can do any of that. And so I think, being a part of that led to just more opportunities for women is really, really special to me.
Awesome. Canis, you were a Marine, and while in the Marine Corps, you learned to climb in Okinawa, Japan, while conducting high-angle search and rescue training as a member of the 3rd Reconnaissance Special Operation Platoon. That's a mouthful. And then after leaving the Marine Corps, you attended Sonoma State University on the GI Bill. Canis pursued his love of climbing and worked at a mom and pop owned outdoor store. It's here where Canis discovered the outdoor industry and began a 30-year career working in executive roles with top outdoor brands. So how did your military service affect your perspective on life and your values?
Thank you, and thank you to the other panelists that are up here as well. It's a big question, really. I would imagine everyone's military experience is different and unique to them. I think for me, and I think about how it affected my other life, it strikes you in so many ways. I mean, I think you first go through phases. Like when you first come out of the military, and I apologize if I sound like I'm talking for other veterans, but you're somewhat taken back when you hit the civilian world. Like when you're in the military, you're so focused on whatever the potentials threats are around the world, geopolitics, world events, affairs, etc., that by the time you get back after the civilian world and you say you want to go to school, you just think everybody's priorities are out of whack or what they're worried about. And it's not that they really are, but you just have this sort of, you need to, kind of unwind a little bit, detune yourself a bit and just sort of settle down into the civilian world. So I think it can affect you in that way or a way similar to that for some people. But I also think it gives you great perspective. Quite often, I'm thinking about my time in the outdoor industry. I should say this, that when I came out, it was not acceptable or cool within the outdoor industry to say you were a veteran. It was held against you typically. They would think anything you did that they disagreed with was probably because you're in the military. And so most people stayed really quiet. But there were a few of us, when I was working at Solomon in particular, there was, I think, 3 of us that were veterans. And we noticed typically at the end of the day when we still had to work hard and everybody else was complaining about how they wanted to go to sleep, we were all quite happy to keep working and didn't really complain, it didn't really faze us. And it's not to say that it's someone in the military is better. It's just you have a different perspective on that work ethic. You're just kind of, buckle down and get it done. And so I think that, for me, as a personal experience, is something, how it affected me and changed. I would say in a way, too, thinking about, say, maybe being on county council or any of the roles I've had, you tend to think reverse planning, strategic, what are objective dangers or things you want to avoid. So if we want to try to get something done that maybe benefits everybody here in Summit County, and my brain is now kind of rewired a little bit to the way I'll think through the planning of that has changed. And I don't know how much of that is just because of my time in the Marine Corps, but and then I should say too that depending on what job one has in the military, you could have a radically different experience. You could have a good or a bad experience depending on what your job is. Is the job what you thought it was going to be when you went in? Are your commanding officers good or bad? That can change your experience when you're in there as well. And I just happen to have had kind of my dream experience, like what I had hoped to get out of the military. So for me, it really just got myself out to school, just knuckled down, got everything done, and then found my way. So I think it's immensely helpful.
Thank you. Corey, welcome. We appreciate you coming up from Salt Lake to be with us here today. You started as a member of the U.S. Army as a fire support specialist, and you did that for 4 years on active duty. And you were fortunate to attend the airborne and air assault schools with other training while you were in the service. And then you served in the 2nd Infantry Division, South Korea on the DMZ. Wow, the experiences you must have had there. Unbelievable. You had the privilege to serve as a non-commissioned officer, and then you served in several leadership positions there that I imagine helped prepare you for your current role as the Deputy Director of the Utah Department of Veterans Affairs. So can you tell us a little bit about what your current role is? I mean, what do you do in that kind of a job?
Absolutely. Happy to be here today and have this conversation with this great group. I have to say before I start, I love, was it the sergeant that was up here reading the stories and so funny? And then everyone out here that was doing the happy box and the stories that you were talking about, your family members, their service. I could have sat here and done that for this whole amount of time. That was amazing, and thank you for doing that. It's great to learn from what all of you were talking about and your family members that served. As mentioned, I did serve in the Army. I went in 93, got out in 97. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just a young kid. They said, hey, let's go take a test. And I'll never forget my recruiter's last name, Halverson. I think all of us would never forget your recruiter's name that brought you into the service. But I didn't really know what to expect. But the one thing that I learned very quickly was I joined another family, another tribe that was going to help me throughout my life and my experience as I was serving. Now remember, less than 1% of the folks that raise their right hand and say that I will go and defend my country, foreign and domestic, less than 1%. Think about that, less than 1% of our population. And so again, I just want to echo real quick, thank you to all the veterans in here. Could you raise your hands? All the veterans, raise your hands, please. Thank you for what you do and your service. We really do appreciate it. And it's funny, I go out and, I have veteran on my driver's license and, I'll be out and about and people will be like, hey, you're a veteran or whatever. And it's not the cops saying this to me, I have to clarify. But anyway, they'll be like, oh, you're a veteran, or if I'm wearing something, a pin and whatnot. And they're like, thank you for your service. The first thing out of my mouth is, you were worth it. Because all of you are worth it. And so, yeah, thank you's great. We appreciate it. But it was an honor and privilege to serve with my brothers and sisters because, again, you all are worth it. So what do I do? The State of Utah Department of Veterans and Military Affairs was created in 2007 under John Huntsman. We're not the federal VA. We are a state agency. Our executive director sits on the governor's cabinet. I serve on behalf of the executive director, coordinating veteran services. Now, we have a couple different phases within our department. We have the veteran services side, and I'll talk about that briefly, but we also have, and I'll just say this real quick, we have a deputy over facilities. We have 4 nursing homes in the state of Utah, 1 in Ogden, Salt Lake, down in Payson, and 1 in St. George. They're state operated. We contract with Avalon Healthcare currently right now to operate those. And they're almost all 5 stars, so they're doing great. We're at like 97% occupancy. We also have a cemetery in Bluffdale that we operate. We currently got land donated in South Ogden, and hopefully in 3 years we'll be able to break ground on another cemetery in South Ogden. We're also working on moving our Salt Lake Veterans Home because it's too small, and COVID taught us some things that patients should not be sharing rooms. So we have the funding. We're waiting for the federal VA. We're going to build a new Salt Lake Veterans Home over in the Taylorsville area by the old American Express building. And so we look forward to that. But the military taught me a lot about just working together as a team and always looking out for each other. And so when I got out, I went into law enforcement. I worked law enforcement for 7 years. I went back to school late. While I was going back to school, I was a firefighter, did that. And then I've always surrounded myself with a group and a team with the ultimate goal of accomplishing something. And I think that really did prepare me for what I am doing today, coordinating veteran services, healthcare, education, state benefits, federal benefits, and a lot of other special programs that are on the back of that piece of paper on your table. I won't go into all of them, but there are a lot of great programs. And the one program I do want to talk about is compensation for service-connected disability. If you know of anyone that served in the military, don't ask them if they're a veteran, just ask them if they served. And if they have, let them know to contact our office, and we'll talk to them and see if there's any federal benefits that they might have earned due to their service. I was one of those. I waited 18 years before I connected to services. And I didn't do it because I thought I'd be taken away from my brothers and sisters. The money's in a trust. It's going to be there. It's not going to go anywhere. And so please let them know they can connect with people that will help them through the process for whatever benefits they might have earned. And we have a team within our department that will do that. I'll go to the next question because I know there's a lot of other conversations that need to take place.
I'm fascinated by all of these stories. I'm going to ask some just general questions of the panel, and then I want to leave a few minutes so if anybody here has a question, we could get those answered as well. I think all of us, as we look back on our service, can I pick up a few moments that really impacted us and maybe shifted our perspective on things. I know for me, I was stationed in Long Beach, California at the time when the very last of our veterans or wounded warriors were returning from Vietnam. And I think for me, the most impactful lesson I learned was that sometimes the deepest and most painful wounds you can't see. And our veterans came home with those wounds. And that really has shifted my perspective as I'm dealing with folks. And in my current role, sometimes I deal with difficult people. And I try to think of, you know, what wound is there that we're really seeing here. So, Caitlin, what was an impactful moment for you?
I think a lot. I think while we're talking about veterans, I'm going to sort of segue into the family members. So for me, I grew up in a military family. My dad was in the Army for 41 years. My brother is still in the Army. My husband was in the Army. My sister was in the Army. I know, I could keep going, actually, if you want. I don't know how long we have. But my mom, multiple times, I'm going to try to hold it together here, on more than one occasion had to say goodbye to her husband and her son, or her husband and her daughter at the same time to deploy. And that, now as the mother of 3 boys, is something that I cannot fathom. I obviously said goodbye to my dad at times, said goodbye to my husband, but to have a spouse and a child in combat at the same time is something that I truly cannot imagine. And so I think that, you know, I got to see my dad. We had a family reunion in Iraq and Afghanistan. I would not put it on your list of places to host a family reunion, but it worked great for us. So those moments come back to me. And so every Veterans Day, whenever somebody thanks me, I always am very conscientious to also thank the family members because they go through just as much. And sometimes I think it can actually be harder to be that person left behind. So for me, those family members deserve all the thanks that we get as well.
Go ahead.
I think I love being in the military. I love the Air Force. I really enjoyed my time in the Army, and so I have a very unique experience. I was in the early 90s as well, and then served through the early 2000s, got out for 15 years. And I've done active, I've done reserves, I've done National Guard. But one of my favorite times was, even though it's not my favorite time, was COVID. And it was because I was able to give back to my community. And I was trying to be that person where I really had that influence in my community. It wasn't, it was like, put your politics aside, here's what we have, and help your community out. And that starts with you. So that was probably one of the most impactful, even though I've been in the Middle East and, desert rotations and all that stuff. It was really, really, really rewarding to be a part of the community during that time. And so I was with the initial, I'm sure you guys heard, National Guard was activated. There was the initial 100. So I was part of that, and then I was carried all the way through to the end. So I feel like that was like one of my favorite pieces.
Trying to think of something interesting. I was in the infantry, so it all kind of sucked. But so
But you can hump a ruck.
That's right. That's my skill that I took with me. But we had kind of a fun one. Fun. I was stationed in Alaska. I was an Arctic paratrooper of all things. There was only one company of us, so it was kind of cool to be the only ones wearing berets around the base. And we jumped into Kotzebue, or in the Kotzebue area, which is north of the circle, in January. And our platoon leader, there's something wrong with his compass, but we got totally lost up there. And you wouldn't think you could, but we did. And so for about a day and a half, we're just trudging through, northern Alaska, and they had no idea where we were. And finally, a couple guys showed up on snowmobiles. They're actually Eskimo scouts with the National Guard. And they were just like, "What are you guys doing way out here?" we don't know. But so, and it was just kind of funny because the whole time, people would just be having these massive breakdowns, and you'd sort of let them scream and throw things and just look at them and like, "Oh, what are you going to do now?" We're still stuck out here. So anyway, it's kind of a fun story.
Well, if we start breaking into stories, then we're going to have to get some beer out, and we could be here all night. I think, when you think about impact of experience, being in a Marine reconnaissance unit, so you're the eyes and the ears of the battalion or the infantry unit, so our area of operation is what you would just think anywhere you want into enemy territory. And how we got in there is kind of some of the more specialized ways to insert and extract, whether that's I got to go to jump school where Rory went as well, and other ways. But when we're doing this, we're in 6-person teams. So I think the most impactful part of all that for me, even in peacetime, is just the confidence and that you get and the comfort you get from the people that you're with. The understanding that everybody to your left, your right is qualified and as motivated as you could ever hope to meet. So I think that being around that quality of person was incredibly impactful for me. And then you fast forward to not long before I got out of the service, but we were inserting in a training exercise. And anyways, I just loaded my team onto a helicopter and was asked to move to a different helicopter to take off. We're on a ship. And as we did, and we were circling around, for anybody that's been in aircraft, we could hear our crew chief just go, "Oh shit," like just yell it. And it was just clear as day, which you normally can't hear in these things. And then our helicopter started spinning and falling. It righted itself, and then we could see that the helicopter that we had been in had just crashed into the ocean. So, sorry. But we lost 12 of our guys. We managed to save 8. And but you can, I guess the point is that impact of how tight you are with your people, and that surreal moment of, packing up their packs and their gear the next morning to get it all off the ship. But I don't really talk about it much, but obviously it impacts me and has affected my life a bit.
So serving as a chaplain, I had a really unique perspective. And on a lighter note, one thing I really enjoyed was disrupting the stereotype of what chaplains look like and what the person who says, "Send me." So I didn't look like Father Bob. And I was in that slideshow that Ari, thank you so much for doing that. So I was a baby. And a lot of people were like, who's the chaplain looking past me? And I was like, it's me. So people asked me really funny, like if I was Catholic, and I was like, no, the Catholics don't ordain women. I mean, it was frequently, if I had $1 for every, you're the first woman chaplain I've met, I could have retired. And even in the time that I was serving, when women had been serving in the ministry and in the military for a while before I came along, I frequently also heard I didn't know that women could be chaplains. So I think just showing up and just doing my job in this body that I'm in was a really important thing for me to do. But a fun story as well of a really positive experience I had was I was at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. And it was after the Afghan war had begun, and we had been taking in Pashtun. They were, I don't even know, soldiers is probably too big of a word for them, but they were helping our troops in Afghanistan. And we had some boys, I mean, they were teenagers that had been injured in Afghanistan, and we brought them back to the United States to help them recover, and some of them had amputations. And they were away from their families. They were living in a hospital. They had a translator, but they were really kind of off to themselves. And I was living at Walter Reed too. And one day at the dining facility, their translator started talking to me, and I started talking to him, and we started visiting each other and sharing stories about our families and our lives. And that was just a really rich experience for me to be able to talk to them and hear from them about what their lives were like, and then for them to have a chance to get to know us and me a little bit more. That was a really great experience. You rode horses. Oh, so they were, the Afghans have a strong tradition of being horsemen, and I'm a horse person as well, and so I would show them pictures of me on the horse, and they said if I was in Afghanistan, I would be shot. And they weren't trying to be mean. But so we definitely had some cultural exchange about what was okay in our country and what's okay in Afghanistan, but it was a good experience.
Real quick, I'll just touch back, and we're talking about some experience. My experience took place as a 19-year-old kid in Korea. When I showed up in Korea, I was artillery, a forward observer, so I would call in indirect fire from ships, airplanes, mortar rounds, etc., on enemy locations, or if we were doing movements, then I would plan movements along with our team in case there was things that would pop. If we needed smoke or different things, then we could pop smoke or whatever we needed. But I remember when I got to Korea, I was part of the artillery, and they reattached me to 1st of 506 Infantry, and which I found out later was right up on the DMZ in Korea. Here I am, 19 years old, waking up in the morning. I would look out my window, and I'd see the North Korean flag flying up in the distance. And then I'd walk out of my billets, my barracks, and I'd go out front, and I'd see the American flag. And being and serving my country, especially deployed over there and doing other things, what that taught me was unconditional love for my country and for the people that we serve. And it was amazing. And so I'll never forget the feeling when I'd look and see the North Korean flag, but then I'd look and see the American flag. That taught me more in my life than probably anyone else prior to that, and I found that out on my own. And, you know, we talk about duty, honor, integrity, loyal, sense of selflessness, command, et cetera. I'm missing one of the 7. The Army guy out here, tell me which one I just missed. But that's our DNA. And it was talked about transition and coming home and some of these other things. It is hard when you do that transition, you come back in the civilian world, because you are in a different environment. You are in a different family, and you are under a different set of rules. So then leaving that, it's an adjustment going into that. Now imagine the adjustment coming back out of that once you live it. And so that's why we talk about transitions and how difficult they can be for other folks out there. And so please, whatever you do, just when you're out and about, you don't have to say every time, thank you for your service. If you see someone, you can say, oh, you know, where did you serve at? You know, start the conversation sometimes with some other things. Ask about them maybe a little bit. What rank did you achieve when you were in service, et cetera? And then it can start another conversation and different things like that as a dialogue. But that aspect of my military service, first time being out of country as a 19-year-old kid, not knowing if there's really tigers in Korea or lions or pandas or anything. None of that was there, by the way. But it was scary, and it was very interesting and life-changing. So,
Can we? I know we're out of time, but I would like really quickly before we all break to recognize the other veterans who have served in this room. So Joe Davis stand up, I'm looking at you. Timothy Higdon, my husband, Brad Reed, Fuzzy, Kevin McCarthy, Hans,
Tom Oliver.
George Hull, Joe Cronley.
Mac McCoy.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. If I have family member. Sam here? Ham.
Any others? Oh, there you go. Thank you for that.
Thank
give
you to
them a
all
round
of
of
you so
applause.
much.
Well, to our panel, I could sit here and listen to you all afternoon and hear stories from other people in the room as well. Thank you all for being part of the panel today, for sharing your stories, and thanks to you to the veterans that are here in the room. Thank you so much for your service.
So while they're getting a picture, on behalf of Rotary and our presentation today of our stories of service, we donate a book back to our local library. But this is also a good one for those of us that have little people in our lives, or if we have friends that have little ones, it's a great one to share. So I'm just going to read just a couple of excerpts from this book. It's called Veterans, Heroes in Our Neighborhood. There are family, neighbors, friends who never boast or brag. We all should be reminded of their love for home and flag. And as the book goes on, it shares different stories about neighbors of this little boy. It says, it doesn't matter where they served, what service branch or rank. What matters is remembering them. And offering our thanks. So on behalf of Rotary, thank you for being here.